didn't plan it. I didn't rehearse what I was going to say. I just picked up the phone, called my attorney, and told her to start the paperwork. That was a Thursday morning in October. My daughter was at her spin class. My son-in-law was at work, probably smiling at clients, shaking hands, being charming the way he always was when there was something to gain. And I was sitting at my kitchen table in Charlotte, North Carolina, with a cup of coffee I hadn't touched, and a decision I had already made. Let me go back to the beginning, because if I start there, maybe you'll understand why it took me so long. And maybe you'll understand why, when I finally moved, I didn't hesitate for even 1 second. My name is Celeste. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years as a high school principal in Mecklenburg County. I raised my daughter alone after her father passed from a heart attack when she was 11. It was just the two of us in that house on Elmwood Drive for a long time, and I thought I knew her. She was. Her name is Tanya. She was always sharp, always driven. Got a full scholarship to UNC Chapel Hill. Called me every Sunday without fail during her freshman year. I was so proud of her I used to tear up just looking at her graduation picture on my mantle. She met her husband, Derek, at a work conference in Atlanta 6 years ago. He was in commercial real estate, wore nice suits, talked like he'd read every self-help book ever written. The first time she brought him home for Thanksgiving, he helped me carry dishes to the kitchen without being asked, and I thought, well, this one might be different. They got married 2 years later. Small ceremony in Asheville, beautiful venue up in the mountains. I paid for half of it, $32,000, because Tanya said they wanted to start their marriage without debt, and I wanted that for her too. I told myself it was an investment in her happiness. That was the first check. It was not the last. 6 months after the wedding, Derek came to me with an investment opportunity. He said he had a client, a developer in Raleigh, who was flipping commercial properties and needed a short-term bridge loan. $60,000 for 8 months, and I'd get back 80. He showed me documents, projections, a brochure that looked professional enough. I'm not a financial expert, but I've managed school budgets for decades, and something in me said to be careful. I told him I needed to think about it. He nodded, said he understood completely, said he would never pressure me. 2 weeks later, Tanya called me. She said, "Mom, this is a real opportunity." She said Derek would never steer our family wrong. She said sometimes you have to take a leap. I was 62 years old with a pension and a paid-off house and savings. I had built one careful dollar at a time since I was 25. I did not want to take a leap, but she was my daughter, and she asked me. I wrote the check. 8 months came and went, then 9, then 10. When I asked about the return, Derek said the project had hit delays. Permitting issues. Nothing to worry about. These things take time in commercial real estate, Celeste. You know how it is. I did not know how it was. That was the point. By month 14, I stopped asking Derek directly and started asking Tanya. She got quiet on the phone. Said Derek was handling it. Said I needed to trust the process. I did not feel good about the process. At month 18, I drove to their house in Ballantyne, a neighborhood in South Charlotte where the houses have 3-car garages and the HOA fees are $500 a month. Derek's car was in the driveway, a new car, a 2003 BMW X7. I had not seen that car before. I sat in my own car in their driveway for a moment and just looked at it. I went inside. We had dinner. Nobody mentioned the $60,000. On the drive home, I called my sister, Odette, who lives in Greensboro. I told her what I was seeing. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Celeste, you need to get a lawyer. Not because anything is definitely wrong, just because you need to know where you stand." I did not want to get a lawyer. Getting a lawyer meant admitting that something was wrong. It meant that my daughter's husband had possibly taken my retirement money and used it to buy a luxury SUV. It meant my daughter might have let him. I waited 3 more months. I don't know why. I think part of me was still hoping there was an explanation I hadn't heard yet. Then came Easter Sunday. We had dinner at their house. Tanya had cooked. She makes a beautiful glazed ham, always has. And Derek's parents were there, his brother, a couple of their friends from the neighborhood. It was a full table. Loud, happy on the surface. After dinner, when the other guests had gone and I was helping Tanya clear the plates, I brought it up quietly. I said I needed an update on the investment. I said 18 months had become 21 and I needed some kind of answer. She set down the plates. She looked at me in a way I hadn't seen before. Not apologetic, not embarrassed, tired. Like I was the one being unreasonable. She said, "Mom, Derek has been under a lot of stress." I said, "Tanya, I gave him $60,000. She said, "I know how much you gave him." I said, "Then you understand why I'm asking." Derek walked in from the living room right then. I don't know if he heard us or if he always had a way of showing up when his name was being said. He looked at me. He said, "Celeste, we've talked about this." I said, "We haven't talked about it nearly enough." He said, "And I want to be precise here because I have replayed this moment many times." He said, "You knew the risks when you invested. That's how real estate works. I'm sorry if you had different expectations." I felt the air leave the room. I said, "I had the expectation of getting my money back, Derek." He said, "And we're working on that." Tanya was standing between us, not saying the word. I looked at her. I waited for her to say something, anything, to her husband, to acknowledge that this was my life savings we were talking about, to act like my daughter, the way she had always been my daughter, the one who called every Sunday and helped me change the storm windows every November and cried on my shoulder when her father's anniversary came around each year. She looked at the floor. I picked up my purse. I said goodnight. I drove home. And I did not cry until I was inside my own house with the door locked behind me. I'm going to tell you something I've never said out loud before. The money hurt. Of course it did. $60,000 is not nothing. That's years of substituting at summer school for extra income. That's skipping vacations. That's never once buying a new car when a used one would do. That's real sacrifice, and it was gone. But what broke something in me that Easter Sunday was not the money. It was Tanya looking at the floor. I called my attorney the next morning. Her name is Patricia, and she has been my attorney for 12 years. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I appreciate most about Patricia. When I finished, she said, "Okay, let's talk about your options." There were several, because I had a signed promissory note. Derek had given me that much, at least. It was legally a loan, not an investment, which meant I could pursue repayment in civil court. Patricia said the case was actually fairly clean. The documentation was solid. The timeline was clear. She said, "Celeste, you have more leverage here than you think." I did not feel like I had leverage. I felt like I had been foolish. She also asked me one other thing. She asked whether Derek was listed anywhere on my estate documents, whether I had updated my will after their marriage. I had not, but I had named Tanya as the sole beneficiary on my life insurance policy, my retirement accounts, and my investment portfolio, and I had a living trust that would pass my house and remaining assets to her upon my death with no conditions. Patricia said, "You might want to revisit those documents while we sort this out." I went home and I thought about it for 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks, Tanya called me twice. Both times she said she was checking on me. Both times the conversation was surface level. Weather, a TV show she was watching, how my knees had been bothering me. Not once did she mention Easter. Not once did she mention Derek. Not once did she say, "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't speak up when you were standing in my kitchen asking for your money back." On the 15th day, I made an appointment with my financial advisor, a woman named Sylvia who works out of an office on South Tryon Street. I told her what I wanted to do. She did not try to talk me out of it. She helped me restructure everything. The life insurance beneficiary was updated. The retirement accounts were redirected to a charitable trust with conditions attached. The living trust was amended so that any inheritance to Tanya would bypass Derek entirely and go into a protected account in her name only with a trustee other than him. Then I called Patricia back and told her to file the civil suit. The papers were served on a Tuesday. Derek opened the envelope at his office. I know this because Tanya called me 47 minutes later and she was not quiet anymore. She said, "Mom, how could you do this?" I said, "I lent your husband $60,000 and he has not paid back 1 cent in 23 months. She said, "You're embarrassing him at work." I said, "Tanya?" She said, "He is my husband." I said, "And I am your mother." There was a long silence. She said, "I can't believe you went behind our backs." I said, "I can't believe you went behind our backs." I said, "I went to an attorney." That is not behind anyone's back. That is what adults do when they have a legal dispute. She said Derek was going to countersue. She said he had documentation showing I had agreed to investment risk. She said this was going to destroy their marriage. I said I was sorry she felt that way. I said it quietly. I meant it. I was not trying to destroy anything. I was trying to get back what was mine. She hung up. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing. Patricia communicated with Derek's attorney. There were letters back and forth. He did indeed try to claim it was an investment with assumed risk. His documentation was thin. The promissory note I had in my possession said otherwise. Patricia told me to let her handle it and go live my life, which is easier said than done when you are waiting to find out whether your daughter is going to come back to you. Odette came and stayed with me for a long weekend in November. We cooked and watched old movies, and she didn't bring up Derek or Tanya unless I did. I love my sister for that. I would have fallen apart without her. Then one morning in early December, Patricia called me before 9 o'clock, which she never does unless something has happened. She said, "Celeste, Derek wants to settle." He did not want to go to court. His attorney had clearly advised him that his documentation was not going to hold up, and the last thing a commercial real estate broker wants is a civil judgment on his record. He offered $52,000. Patricia said she had countered at 58. They settled at 56,000. It was not the full 60, but it was returned to my account in the single wire transfer on a Thursday afternoon in December. And I sat at that same kitchen table where I'd made the phone call in October. And I looked at the confirmation on my laptop screen, and I finally let myself take a deep breath. That same evening, my phone rang. It was Tanya. Her voice was different. Smaller, she said, "Mom, I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay." She said, "I know I should have said something." At Easter, and before that, I knew things were going wrong with the loan, and I kept telling myself Derek would fix it. I kept thinking if I just gave him more time, it would work out and you'd never have to know how bad it had gotten. I thought I was protecting you. I said, "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting him." She was quiet for a moment. She said, "I know. I don't think that conversation fixed everything. I'm not sure everything can be fixed." There is something that shifted in me when she looked at the floor that Easter Sunday, and I don't know yet whether it fully shifts back. I think trust is like that. You can repair a crack in a wall, but you know where the crack was. You know exactly where to look. What I do know is this. I'm 64 years old. I have worked my entire life. I have given generously my time, my energy, my money, because I believed in the people I loved. And the moment I decided to stop absorbing a loss that was not mine to absorb, the moment I picked up the phone and said enough, was the first moment in 2 years that I felt like myself again. The paperwork from my estate revisions is in a folder in my home office. Tanya knows about it, I told her. I told her it was not punishment. It was just clarity. It was me being honest, at last, about what I had learned. Derek and Tanya are still married. I don't know what happens next with that. I have dinner with her once a month, just the two of us, and we're finding our way back to each other slowly. Derek is not part of those dinners. That is a boundary I set, and Tanya has respected it, and I think respecting it is part of how she is trying to show me she means what she said on the phone in December. I don't hate Derek. I don't have room in my life for that kind of weight. But I see him clearly now, and that's something I can't undo, and I wouldn't if I could. The coffee on my kitchen table is hot now. I'm drinking it, and I am not waiting for anyone's permission to be okay. I keep coming back to that kitchen table, the untouched coffee, the laptop screen with the wire transfer confirmation, the way the house felt so quiet and so full at the same time. What happened to me didn't happen overnight. That's the part I want people to understand. Derek didn't walk into my life and take $60,000 in one move. It happened slowly, a wedding contribution here, a can't-miss opportunity there, a dinner where nobody said the thing that needed to be said. The erosion was gradual, and I let it happen because I loved my daughter and I wanted to believe the best about the man she chose. That's not weakness. I've made my peace with that. Loving people and extending trust to them is not the same as being foolish. What matters is what you do when the evidence finally becomes impossible to ignore. I think about Tanya standing in that kitchen at Easter, looking at the floor. I've turned that image over in my mind more times than I can count. She knew. She had known for a while, and she chose silence. Not because she was a bad person, but because she had convinced herself that silence was the same as keeping the peace. It isn't. Silence in the face of wrong doesn't protect anyone. It just delays the reckoning and makes the damage worse when it finally arrives. What I learned, what I had to learn at 62 years old, which is later than I would have liked, is that integrity is a daily practice, not a personality trait you're born with. Derek had charm and presentation, but he did not have integrity. When the pressure came, when the money got tight, when the truth needed to be spoken, he deflected and minimized and let my daughter carry the weight of his choices. That is a man who has never been made to reckon with himself. I could not fix that. But I could stop funding it. The attorney, the restructured accounts, the civil suit, none of that came from anger. By the time I made those calls, the anger had already burned off. What was left was clarity. And clarity, I've found, is one of the most useful things a person can develop over a lifetime. It's what you get when you stop letting other people's comfort override your own good judgment. It takes discipline to get there. It took me decades of managing budgets and difficult staff members and my own grief after losing my husband. All of that built something in me that I almost forgot I had. I almost forgot because I was so busy trying to keep the family whole. The money came back. Most of it. The relationship with my daughter is coming back too, slowly, one dinner at a time. But the version of me that would have written that check again, that woman is gone. Not because I became harder, because I became clearer, because I finally understood that protecting yourself is not the opposite of loving someone. Sometimes it's the only honest thing left to do. The coffee is hot now. I drink it while it's hot.